Thank you, Mr. Rogie. We're coming up on the item that we moved up. So, Ms. Bowers, if you'd introduce the item.
Certainly. So now we're going to go to item 10.1, discussion action. This is notice of violation to the Tri-Valley Learning Corporation. And I will ask Mr. Chris Van Schack, our Assistant Superintendent, to present the notice of violation to the Tri-Valley Learning Corporation to our board for action. And also available here is John Ye, our legal counsel, and he's also available to answer questions. Mr. Van Schack.
Thank you, Ms. Bowers. Wait for our technology to catch up with us. President Bueno, tonight I bring for the presentation of the board the notice of violation of the Tri-Valley Learning Corporation Corporate Board. A little bit of background before I begin. Livermore Valley Charter School came under our oversight on July 1st, 2013. Prior to that, they had been overseen by the State Board of Education. Livermore Valley Charter Prep High School also came under our oversight. This time, July 1st, 2015, so 2 years later, they too had been a state school. As early as January 2014, we had stated concerns about late payments. We asked the Tri-Valley Learning Corporation Board for increased transparency and improved governance structures. In fact, a quote from one of the early reports specifically stated the challenges that their community was facing due to the lack of transparency. That was in October of 2014. The first notice of concern came in October 2015. And my point in this slide is to point out that the things that we're talking about tonight didn't get foisted upon the Tri-Valley Learning Corporation here at the last minute. This has been an ongoing challenge for us. We've had some concerns over the last couple of years, and sort of tonight they come to fruition. The process, we start off with an informal request for information or action. That often comes via an email, a phone conversation. I did site visits, followed up with principals, sometimes phone conversations with their CEO. If we didn't get the action or the information that we needed, we sometimes followed up with a formal request via an email or a written correspondence. If that was ineffective, we followed that up with a notice of concern. If that too was ineffective, we've come to the place of a notice of violation. And this evening is a culmination of several different incidents that led to this notice of violation. Specifically, we're going to discuss a little bit about the foreign exchange program at LVCP, which we have concerns about, their fiscal mismanagement, the withholding of accreditation from WASC that affects their high school, and in general, a lack of transparency and integrity. The foreign exchange program at LVCP was noted by us last winter. They were charging in what in our minds was illegal tuition to students who were coming over from China. They were also attempting to transfer students from their Livermore campus to a Stockton school. They used the Livermore Valley Charter Prep name for marketing purposes in China, which is also a violation of law. So that's a concern that we have about their exchange program. Fiscal mismanagement, in some ways much more egregious. Recently they had failed to make CalSTRS payments, which are related to teachers' retirement. They failed to remit payment from payroll deductions to vendors after making promises to their teachers to do so. They've had a number of unpaid or delinquent financial obligations. Those folks in many cases have contacted us and asked for our assistance in getting them paid. And they've had a number of irregularities in their budgeting processes, which have led them into some fairly dire financial straits. The recent withholding of accreditation from WASC started in April. The Western Association of Schools and Colleges issued a notification of potential withholding. They asked for information. Unsatisfied, in June of 2016, they sent a letter to TVLC notifying them that they were voting to withhold their accreditation. And for those of you that are perhaps unaware, in order for students at high schools in California to be able to use the courses to apply to colleges, the school that they attend must be accredited. So the loss of accreditation could potentially have dire results for the students who are attempting to go to colleges beyond high school. We've also, over the years, seen a lack of transparency and integrity. This has created some significant concerns for the community and for the parents of the students at the school. Misrepresentation to the mayor regarding the parking lot. A number of changing explanations about their exchange program. Attempts to cover up issues that they had with teachers who were uncredentialed teaching in subject areas. Misrepresentations that they made to the state superintendent regarding investigations that were taking place. Changing explanations of what was really going on with the students who had been transferred against their will to Stockton. And shifting explanations in general about the exchange program. We've also had a number of parent complaints from the community that they failed to address in a manner consistent with the charter petition that we approved. The sum total of this are a number of extremely concerning issues that the district has. Ultimately, our job as the oversight agency is to ensure that they follow through on promises that they've made to our community. The charter petition is essentially a list of promises about educational program and the way that they would do business. And they've made these promises to their parents, to potential parents, stating that this is the type of education program, this is the type of expectations you can have for us as a corporation. And when we see them stepping outside of that, it's our responsibility as the oversight agency to bring these to their attention. As I mentioned in the process, we start off by doing that in an informal way. And when we don't get the results that we need, we escalate. And in this case, we've escalated to a notice of violation. We also, at the very end of our notice, we've listed a number of remedies. In the past, when we've given them notifications of errors that they had made, information that they had not provided to us, perhaps process that they hadn't followed, we'd left it to their own devices to come up with remedies. That hasn't been successful. So this evening, we're providing them with remedies. These are ways that they can go about getting themselves back on track. I think it's fair to say that we are here to provide support, but also here to get them back into a position where they're providing the education that they've promised to this community. First, we're asking for a disassociation from TVLC of the two schools in Livermore. We're asking that they create a new independent governing board. We're asking them that they hire a new permanent CEO. We're asking that they retain a third party to conduct their audits. We're asking that they pay off their existing debt. We're asking that they take care of the CalSTRS payments that they're in arrears. We're asking more broadly that they disassociate with any corporate entity. We're asking that they discontinue their foreign exchange programs for the upcoming year. And we're asking that they develop a transition plan for the students that are currently attending their high school in case that the accreditation is not restored, so that those students have an opportunity to attend colleges in their future. So this is a list of remedies. Again, as I pointed out before, this didn't happen overnight. This is kind of the culmination of probably 18 months worth of challenging relations. And the superintendent's recommendation is that the board approve the delivery of the notice of violation to the Tri-Valley Learning Corporation board members. Be happy to answer any questions that the board may have.
Thank you, Mr. Manchak. Any comments? Okay. Okay. What I'm going to do is, there's no questions at this time from the board, so we're going to go ahead and call some of our folks up that may have questions, and I'll call you up. And it's a short walk, so no need to line up or anything. We have a few cards. Again, I'll remind everyone of the 3-minute courtesy time. And the first person I'll call up is Julie Lassig. Mr. Robert Clark, you'll be next. Let's go ahead and have a seat. Oh, I saw that you had you checked a box for written material, so if you could hand it to Mr. Warner or Ms. McConnell, and she can distribute those. That's fine. Thank you.
Good evening, President Bueno and the board. I'm here to speak for TVLC, and we believe that we've maintained a cooperative working relationship with the district since its authorization of the Livermore Charter Schools, and we wish to continue working with the district to address its concerns in a fair and cooperative manner. Additional school administration and staff would have liked to have been here tonight, but we have a conflicting meeting in Stockton Unified District tonight, so they couldn't make it. So everyone here has received electronic copies with all of the attachments, and I did bring 2 copies that I just handed off. We're concerned about the district's proposed notice of violation that is incomplete and premature, and it goes against the cooperative relationship we have maintained with the district over the years. The draft notice does not acknowledge the 19 responses we have submitted to the district to address its letters and notices, which we are submitting to the district tonight as part of our written response. The district's draft notice ignores the fact that many of these, quote, violations were already addressed in our prior responses, where we either remedied or refuted those concerns, and the draft notice does not identify which concerns have been addressed to the district's satisfaction and which concerns may still need to be refuted or remedied. We are also concerned because any action by the Board of Education tonight on the proposed notice of violation would violate the Brown Act and deprive TVLC of due process. The district just provided us a copy of the draft notice late on Friday evening, two working days prior to this Board of Education meeting. The district posted the agenda for tonight's meeting with the draft notice as an informational item, not an action item, which the district changed only hours ago. And the district failed to properly agendize the draft notice to provide even 24 hours notice of proposed action under the Brown Act. We ask that the Board of Education postpone action of the draft notice of violation tonight so that the district can continue to work with us. We ask district staff to meet with us to discuss its concerns and remedies, and we ask the district to provide adequate notice of actions on our charters so that we can properly respond to the district in a meaningful manner. Thank you.
Mr. President, I'd like to ask a clarifying question.
Really? Thank you, Ms. Lasik.
I'd like staff to address the question of the notice for this meeting.
So the notice was served, I believe it's 72 hours is the requirement, but we actually served it in person, Mr. Venchak and I, to the Tri-Valley Learning Corporation, and we emailed it as well. So we had electronic copy and personal hand service, and it was signed for, and that was Friday afternoon. And I do know that it was received Friday because I received an immediate response at, well, close to 10 minutes to 5 from Procopio, which would be the lawyer, the attorney for the Tri-Valley. So as far as the notice and the service, that was adequate to my understanding of the law, but we also have our attorney here.
Good evening, President Bueno, members of the board, John Ye from Burke, Williams, and Sorensen. There were 2 allegations raised, one with respect to service of the notice. As Superintendent Bowers notes, the regulations require the district to provide the notice and the supporting documentation 72 hours before the meeting. And the notice was hand-delivered to TVLC offices on Friday, so that requirement was met and exceeded. We also, I heard the speaker's comments and reviewed the letter from TVLC regarding the Brown Act issue. I've reviewed the agenda. The agenda that was initially posted on Friday states in several places that this was an agenda item for action. And I think any reasonable observer or reasonable reviewer of the agenda, which would be the legal standard, would conclude that the district and the board intended to take action tonight. So I believe that the agenda is in substantial compliance with the Brown Act and the board can proceed tonight.
Thank you, Ms. Ye.
If I could just follow up on one thing, though, I would still, regardless of the action that the board takes tonight and how the outcome is, I would just like to let Mrs. Lasig know and the people that she represents that couldn't be here tonight because they have another commitment, that we're still willing, to meet regardless of the outcome tonight. We welcome a meeting to try to help with resolution. And Mr. Venchak, I can commit my staff, if it's financial, Mrs. Kinder, our CBO, Mr. Venchak, or Mr. Vernoy, who isn't here tonight because he's also at the other meeting, but we would be willing and happy to meet to help resolve.
Thank you, Mr. Bowers. And I will call up Mr. Robert Clark. And Roxanne Cusco will be next. Good evening.
Good evening, Mr. Bueno. Is that correct? I'm not here representing anybody in particular other than my family. We live in the district. We have kids that go to LVCS. We've been here for 6 years, kids in LVCS for 4 years. They still go to LVCS because it's objectively got a number of very good teachers, and the kids do get treated quite well. It's actually a very good school academically. With all of this, we've gone and looked at other schools in the area. Our kids have been evaluated for other schools. I think, every evaluation they've gotten has been excellent. So as far as the education itself, I'd say the school is very good. As far as the management of the school, I think objectively there's more than a few problems, some of which have been gone through already. The one thing I would ask in looking at your draft NOV is that you consider that, consider the idea at least that, you have the opportunity to be the adults in the room in this interaction. I don't know how, I can't speak to their integrity or their honesty. I won't suggest anything less than integrity and honesty from you people. But the fact of the matter is, when I look at the recommendations that you're making for them as remedies, if I can paraphrase, it's something like create a new entity separate from TVLC that takes TVLC's job over and does it separately from TVLC, which sounds to me a lot like get a new charter management organization and give them responsibility for managing the charter schools. With all due respect, I think that recommendation is something that that this board has the power to do, not TVLC. You're the authorizer for the charter. If you think the charter should be taken away from TVLC, then with all due respect, I suggest you take it away from them. Don't ask them to do it for you. And so looking at your recommendations, I would say, whether you have the legal authority or whether they can legally do what you're asking, I'm not sure. I'm not a lawyer. It seems to me it's kind of fishy. But regardless of that, it's something that I think we can all objectively look at and say, you're essentially asking them to kill themselves off, and they're not going to do it. So I would say, meet with them and come up with some recommendations ahead of time before you issue this that they can actually fulfill, that are reasonable things that they might actually do. So that's all my only request. Thank you.
Thank you. And great timing also. Thank you. Roxanne Cusco, followed by Bruce Wolfson.
It's Roxanne Kuski. So tonight my heart is aching. I no longer have a horse in the race. My little pony is at Humboldt State in her little teeny tiny dorm, a proud Granada graduate. LVCS still has a piece of my heart. I remember when their name was chosen, Livermore Valley Charter School. It wasn't called the Combo Public-Private Academy. It wasn't called the Save the World Venture. It was simply the Livermore Valley Charter School. It was simply a choice for our children. I remember our founder gave years of his life to open the school. I remember parents painted murals, helped with field trips, watched out daily for my child. I remember teachers sparking my child's mind with hands-on learning and loving my child. I remember respectfully all three principals. I also recall when power was given over by the parents to the former CEO and to the board to self-perpetuate. I hope that even though their vision differed from mine, that they would care for our school. And some did. But others, whether for glory or for greed, have let our children down. I can only ask tonight that as you consider your actions, that you put any politics or pettiness aside, that you center your thoughts on the children, on the parents, and on the teachers of the charter school. I ask that you thoughtfully and prayerfully choose your course tonight and continue to do that as events unfold. Thank you.
Thank you, Mrs. Kuski. Mr. Wolfson, Bruce Wilson, and followed by Jeremy Mullins.
Good evening, President Bueno and board. Thank you for giving me the opportunity to speak tonight. This is my first meeting I've come to, and just from even reading the agenda, just seeing the amount of work you guys put in for the kids, I think is very admirable. I wanted to start by saying I'm a proud parent of 2 LVCP students and one who just graduated. And I want to express my sadness and disappointment in regard to how the charter school issues are being handled by everyone, all sides, including parents. I think the school district is doing a good job of moving the charter to clean up their finances, and just seeing how things are being handled, I think, is good. But the way things are being handled by everyone is destructive to the kids. You know, it seems day by day something is coming up, and, you know, you don't burn down the house to make repairs, right? You have to find a good, clean way to do it without, you know, forcing all the kids out. I don't like how the school district has met with parents to plan on how to handle things. I think that's wrong, and if I look at remedies 1 and 2 that were put together, those are issues that were put forth by a bunch of parents in private meetings long ago. So to see their agenda come out as 1 and 2 on this, it was very disappointing for me when I showed up here. You know, I think some of the items being raised outside the finances are wrong. I mean, should the state come here and give a notice of violation when a Granada teacher has sex with a 14-year-old boy? Should the state come here and give a notice of violation when a Granada staff member is not fired after being caught trying to embezzle over $50,000? There are issues everywhere, and it's how you handle it. Handling it in public, handling it to involve the press, the news media, is just creating a lot of havoc for parents, making everyone nervous, wondering what's going to happen to their kids. Will their kids be able to go to college? It could be handled in so much a better way by everyone. And it's just very disappointing for me to see this. I do not want the school district to pull the charter organization. You know, as the previous speaker said, you know, you're asking them to kill themselves. If you look, there's already been changes made. A lot of the people on the financial side and president side who caused problems are gone. It doesn't look like the school district is giving the opportunity for the changes that have already been put in place to move forward. I understand the back and forth on integrity and transparency, and yeah, I could see people being nervous about that, but it still needs to be worked through such that the kids can do things. So I'm probably out of time, but thank you very much for listening.
Thank you, Mr. Wolfson. Mr. Jeremy Mullins.
Hi, thank you for the opportunity to speak. My name is Jerry Mullins, and I'm the parent of 3 children who were there at LVCS the day the school opened. 2 of those children have graduated from LVCP and are very successful scholar athletes in college now. The 3rd is a senior at LVCP as we speak. I'm here to say they had a wonderful, enriching, and successful educational experience. And as far as I want to speak from the classroom family side, the schools aren't broken, and they don't need a lot of fixing. Those of us with the children here understand this, and we want you to also. I understand, going back 12 years, that the district opposed the creation of charter schools and was only and would not participate in the renewal the first time for each. But you're the chartering entity now, and you need to be faithful stewards of these institutions. And while in many respects that means staying out of the way, it also means assuring our financial viability, and it means behaving in a responsible way, a way I would say that is more responsible than what WASC showed this spring, which WASC accepted an anonymous tip that a phone call could show was nonsense and in effect suspended accreditation preemptively, which caused enormous pain on the part of a number of families which panicked and took their kids out of the high school because they thought they wouldn't be able to get into college from it. That was very disruptive and harmful to the students, and it's disruptive to the institution, which at the end of all the other storm and drang we've had over budgets, suddenly had to accommodate the loss of those students. So I would like to suggest to you that yes, assure our financial viability and defend us from things like WASC. And rather than focusing on the complaints from people who have an axe to grind, people who cry for, the visibility of actions, and then who arrange private meetings for the state superintendent of education or with members of the staff or the leadership of this district. Instead, work with the families, work with the staff, and don't do anything preemptive tonight because we've seen what that does. And I'm worried about the overall impact on the families as we try to account for what's happened and deal with the fact that we have a new administration at TVLC that's committed to doing things right. And I think we have replaced the people who were the source of almost all the problems in the last year. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Mullins. Mr. Dick Corso?
Mr. Rogie, the fact that you can't pronounce revocation is probably a good sign. 3 years ago, when we brought our son to Livermore Valley Charter Prep, we brought him there because he was a fish out of water in a big school over at Mendenhall. And it was a little bit of a challenge for a kid that has, that had a IDP. And he went to LVCP, and he flourished. He really did. He grew, he flourished, and we saw growth in him that we might not otherwise have seen. At least that's our perception. Along the way, as a parent being involved, it started to become obvious that there were irregularities with the way that the operations were going. And I'll do deference to all of the rest of the folks who might say otherwise. None of this has happened overnight. WASC didn't happen in June. WASC happened over a period of time. First notification in April. As a parent, the decision that we made to remove our son had nothing to do with all the rest of the challenges, because we were willing to work through all of those with the corporation vocally, visibly, as our right is. We feel that his opportunity to continue on his education and to have that education be successfully carried through with the WASC accreditation was a risk. And we pulled him because of that. And really no other reason ultimately. As Superintendent Bowers and Superintendent Van Schack are aware, we've been very vocal as a parent community and are vocal about reform. We want to continue that. Tri-Valley Learning Corporation is not in a space where it should be. There are issues with the operations of the corporation, and those issues are not being resolved. The long list, that's just the list that's present here, is not even all of the items that have been noticed over a period of time. So I challenge you to look at this judiciously and at the same time hold TVLC accountable for their own actions or lack of action. And I want to echo what a number of other folks have said and kind of close it off with this. I'm glad, first off, to be in the district school. My son is enjoying where he's at and what he's doing. But I want to thank you for all of the work that you've done over the years, and quite frankly, I'm not sure you should have to do this much work. It's almost irresponsible that this much time has to be given to such an action when a corporation is really the responsible party. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Corso. I don't have any more blue cards, and so I'll open it up to my fellow board members.
Greg?
I'll start with Mr. Wenzel. And then we'll go to
Well, first off, I thank you for coming in and providing these statements. I'm a public servant, been a public servant for 27 years. I came to this board for reasons to work with this community. I met the staff, I ran, and prior to being elected, one of the biggest things was learning how this community works and the opportunities that the community was given. And I was impressed with the idea of the charter because the biggest thing that I've been told since I've been here was that the community deserves options, that the people deserve these options. They can choose where they want to go. So I thought this is fantastic. And I met a lot of charter families and they were happy, and so things go along. I was part of the Measure G parcel tax. And from my understanding, when that passed, the part of that tax was a portion of that tax went to the charter schools. That never happens. And yet this district chose, and we got together and we thought that was a good way of keeping this partnership going with this community. I look at this with my other hat on of public service, you know, working with people, understanding what's right and what's wrong. And looking at these policies that, in my mind, they've been broken. And then my one question I have to ask, and may I ask it, what investigations are currently going on other than what we've talked about here? We've asked for some remedies. We've asked for some answers, didn't get them. Can I ask what else is happening regarding the charter schools?
So I can't go into an extreme level of detail, but there are a number of organizations that have been, I guess, concerned and bringing up their concerns. And so the Chinese consulate is concerned and involved in asking questions and fact-finding. Someone mentioned earlier, Superintendent Torlickson. He came initially because the two students were whisked away to Stockton, and then later groups of individual students were brought into rooms with adults and mistreated. And one ultimately was put into a car against his will and left for a few hours locked up. So these are things that have been brought to the police and the district attorney's office, and they're investigating those allegations as well. We have been in touch with SEVIS, which is the immigration offices. WASC, I think someone mentioned here, has had some concerns. The California Teaching Commission, credentialing, has had some concerns. In addition, the city of Livermore, with the mayor's office, had some concerns about assessments and foreclosure of property and misleading information about the permitting. So those are some that just come to mind. There have been various vendors who are not part of an agency, but they're coming forward to ask for the district's cooperation and trying to recoup their money for what the services they've provided or the work that they've done. And then the California Teachers Association, I guess, has a charter branch for a union, and they've come forward to work with the teachers directly. They didn't come at our behest. They've come from the teachers' request, I believe, because the teachers had late payments in their paychecks and their STRS payments and other obligations toward loans, student loans and things were being taken from their paychecks and not going forward. The Alameda County Office of Education has had concerns about the audits, the timing of the audit, the contents of the audit, and then the questions about the budgeting. I'm sorry. It's on our website, but we could also provide one. And then the other issue was that Betty Ye, I guess, is the state controller.
Excuse me, sir. Excuse me, sir.
I'm going to call the police. I'm not calling a supervisor. So if you shut this school down, you're going to have hell to deal with. I'm telling you.
Sir, you're out of order, and we do have the public comment section.
I'm not sir, I'm Joe. What is your name? Craig?
Yeah,
This
yes.
is bullshit. You have 70 people
Sir,
here.
this is a
Hey,
public,
watch the heck of us.
sir, it's a public meeting, so I'd ask you just to be curious.
Because you all sit here and pontificate. How can I say? And I'm disappointed.
Thank you, sir. Okay. But I would just remind everyone's been really courteous. These are public meetings. There's children that watch these public meetings. There's members. We try to conduct ourselves in a real professional manner, even though we're basically volunteers. I get a check for $195 a month. So I just want to make sure that we all extend, the courtesy to each of the speakers. And in this case, Mrs. Bowers, this has been a really trying time, and I know there's a lot of pressure on a lot of people. And sometimes pressures, coming out of a profession where I did 28 years, pressure's really tough on people. And it brings out emotions that sometimes people have a hard time controlling. So I'd ask just for support. I'll try to control the meeting. You can obviously see that, we're not going to try to do it in some overwhelming way. I'm just going to ask you verbally for cooperation. You guys have been really good. So let's call that an exception, and we'll move on. I want to get right back to Mrs. Bowers. And so we can just kind of get our views out and we'll keep this thing fact-based. So thank you all.
I'm sorry. So the Betty Yee is a state controller. So she contacted us and TVLC or LVCS and LVCP, lots of acronyms. She contacted us because she rejected the audit that was finally submitted. And so there's a lot of different agencies who have concerns, and sometimes we can address them, sometimes we point that out so that TVLC can address them, and always from a place of trying to resolve, but at some point when things are unsolvable from our point, then we ask for assistance. So those are just the ones off the top of my head.
Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Bowers. And Ms. Runyon.
Thank you, President Bueno. If I could we go back to this slide? I think it's number 3 that talks about the process. Number one, I want to thank President Bueno. I thought you handled that very well, and I do appreciate the decorum with which most people have conducted themselves this evening. And I think even the outburst is just indicative of a lot of pain. I hear a lot of pain. I hear a lot of pain in this room and in the conversations that have gone on in this community. And it's a real shame, because I think the thing that's really important here are the students and their education. That's really what it's all about. And everything else has become a deterrent to that. So I want to kind of calmly walk through. This is not the first action that's been taken. This has been a long time coming. We've asked informally for things to be remedied, and it hasn't happened. That the charter schools have been in arrears to vendors, to government. I mean, when you deduct a pension payment from somebody's paycheck and it doesn't arrive at the pension authority, the state teachers' retirement system, that's just not something that can be ignored. And so, we've had the informal action, we've had formal requests for action, and then we sent a notice of concern. This is unfortunately the next step in process. That doesn't mean there's going to be a further step, because what we're hoping is that this action, if it passes tonight, will be the remedy that's needed. I believe in choice in education. By the way, that's why we have open enrollment in this district. I think the people on this board and this cabinet believe in choice in education. And I believe that the charter schools are another choice. And it's not for us to say whether charter schools should exist or not exist. They are a fact in California law. They do exist. What we have to do is what the government has told us that we must do, which is to go through a formal process. We have a checklist that we have to look at and say, have they met the standard on these items? And unfortunately, on the items we bring up tonight, they have not met the standard. Again, I want to say there's no issue with the families or the students. As long as there are people that want to attend these schools, I personally am going to work to try to find a path to success, because you know what? I believe in education, whatever form that takes. So if you want to keep your student at the charter school, then we're going to do our very best for you. But right now, tonight, I think our very best is to go ahead and say, hey, there are things that are not being done properly, and here they are, and now the whole world is on notice for them. So I think I've said all that I need to say on that issue. And I sit here, and if other people get up and speak, I'm going to listen to you just as intently as I listen, because I hear what's going on, and I'm listening for the intent behind the words. If we can find a path, we're going to get there. But right now, this is the next step that needs to go in getting compliance on the legal issues. And I tell you, the disappearance in the evening of students who came here from another country. I sent my daughter on an exchange program to Australia. And I tell you, if I had heard that an adult had picked her up from that exchange program and taken her to another city and taken away her cell phone so that she couldn't call anyone, I'd have been frantic and furious. You know, I care about the education of those Chinese students, even though we have no connection with them, because I care about kids. And I hope that all of you do as well. I mean, the conduct that occurred is beyond egregious. And we need to get to the bottom of it. And it seems to all revolve around the management, not the families, not the teachers, not the students, the management.
Thank you, Mrs. Runyon. Clerk Rogie?
Wait, I was going to say some of that. All of you that have children at the charter school, raise your hand if you're happy with it. Awesome. We don't want to take that away. We're trying to push the corporation into doing the job that they said they'd initially do when we took oversight. And there was a long laundry list of things they agreed to do. So none of this has really magically just come about. It's time and time again we've asked them to take care of problems. My story is we registered my daughter when she was going into kindergarten for the charter school. We were put on a wait list, and Croce took her, and 3 weeks later we were happy with Croce School. So a friend of hers in preschool went to the charter school, and they're still good friends, and they still have good education. It's what the parents want and what's good for the children. We have no axe to grind. To tell you the truth, it's harder to revocate than it is to get the problem solved. We don't want to go through this. We have to pay attorneys. You have to pay attorneys. There's hard feelings. None of us really want this. So really, we do want to work with everybody involved, and this is a legal thing as part of our oversight that we have to do. And if it gets it resolved, I'm all for it. So work with us. We're working with you, and we want the kids to have a good education. Thanks.
Thanks, Mr. Rogie. Thank you. Mrs. White?
I guess it's redundant to say this is not about the school. This is about the management. As you know, it's repetitious to say we've talked about this for nearly a year now. And though we get responses to our notices of concern, the poor activities do not improve. This is the next step. This is taking off our shoe and banging on the counter. Pay attention to us. We mean it this time. So shape up. It's never been about the quality of the program. You can walk up and down the streets and people will stop me on the sidewalk and say, do you know what wonderful things the charter school did for my grandchild? And you think, golly, I didn't know they did that. And I expect that one could say, golly, you don't know the school district did similar things too. But we took the same oath that our student board members took today. We take it when we start and start a new term. And part of that oath is to be stewards of the public money and the public trust. And so in doing that, we need to be sure that the money that's coming to TVLC to run LVCP LVCS and LVCP, is spent properly. And we don't know that because the audit doesn't work. The budget doesn't add up. There was concern about where to find out this information. Go to livermoreschools.com. At the top, it says departments. Under departments is administration. The second item is charter school oversight. You'll see every notice of concern we sent to them and all the backup evidence. If you looked at Mr. Wasaki's notes to us from the correspondence today, he's written us his concerns. I expect when you read those, you'll be concerned too. And you'll help TVLC or whoever becomes the management at the charter schools to improve. Make the budget balance. Make the audit turn in on time. And there's no reason to close the school. This is just a heads up, pay attention, we mean business. And I wish us all well in the futures of our children. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. White. So I like Mr. Wenzel, been in public service my whole life. I spent my entire life protecting people, and it was 28 years. And I left there as a fire chief, and I've reviewed a lot of public documents, and I've seen a lot of things in my career. And one of the speakers, said we shouldn't be dealing with this, but this is one of those things that I know it came to light as part of fiscal oversight, but some of the things that we've seen are so concerning that it almost makes you wish you could do more immediately. But sometimes your hands are tied procedurally, and while our emotions might get the best of us and say you need to do something right this moment, you have to rely on the process, and that's why some of those teams are here, whether it be the DA or the state superintendents of schools. None of those are knee-jerk reactions. Those are all very methodically thought out with great thought and always with the best interest of these children. I got on this board 2 years ago. I have no kids in this district. My kids all graduated, and they've all graduated college. So this is a kind of a give back for me. And one of the reasons I do it is because of a remarkable job I think the schools do here, and some of the things that I think maybe I and working collaboratively with others can do to make it excellent. I think that our superintendent and her staff, this is kind of I don't want to say a side issue, but it's not a primary responsibility. This came on in July of last year, and a remarkable job. I've reviewed a lot of documents. The backup document for the letter tonight is, I think, 700 pages long in a chronology. I mean, it's very well put together. There's been a lot of thought and a lot of stress. So no one is absent the stress or the emotion. It's just how we handle this going forward. You have my commitment as someone who was elected to serve this community, that I'll continue to support all children of Livermore. This is simply, to me, the charter is it's simply a choice. Whether you choose to go to Granada or you go to Livermore Valley Charter Prep, those are choices, and those choices should remain in place, whatever those choices are, a magnet school, whatever it is. So the children's best interest always have to be primary. And I believe in my discussions and our meetings here, that has always remained primary and almost solely the issue. So this is not something that comes any surprise. For almost the entire time I've been here, there's been discussion, and certainly since the initial request because of fiscal oversight, to look at some of the books and things, it's been a constant topic of conversation, and quite frankly, it's taken away a lot. We're a really minimally staffed district. We're not heavy on top. We have a superintendent, 2 assistant superintendents, and like 1 person in charge of each thing, curriculum, student services. There's not a lot of people, and they run very, very lean and efficiently. And so this has taken away, but that's the importance of it. Not one complaint that I haven't heard a single one, and I walk through the hallways, not one complaint to say we're missing something else. But you can see it because people are here at 9 o'clock at night. People are here on the weekends trying to take care of other things because of this. That's how much people here care about these children and not letting anything drop so that these children's futures, nothing is compromised. So, I'm in full support of holding people accountable, whatever that means, in terms of the jeopardization or potential jeopardization of children. And in this case, it appears as though there are steps that have been missed by an entity that need to be notified, and it's procedural to move forward. So I'm fully in support of moving forward on this item so that these children's futures are preserved. And we're going to push for excellence. We're not about mediocrity and trying to get to an average. We're trying to push the envelope to do extraordinary things for this community. That's why this took a remarkable step, passing a parcel tax. I shared that with Mr. Wenzel, and over $300,000 went to the Tri-Valley Learning Corporation, or to the schools, for the purpose of assisting them. And we just passed a $250 million bond to help boost our facilities and assist these children. So it's intolerable to me that these type of issues haven't been addressed. But trust me fully, and you have my word. This superintendent and her administration have been extremely diligent in dotting the I's, crossing the T's, following everything procedurally, seeking the right advice, doing everything within their power to be expeditious and to be caring for these children. And that's why we're here tonight. And so I'm in full support of it.
Mr.
Ms.
President, if I may, I'd like to move that we approve the delivery of a notice of violation to the Tri-Valley Learning Corporation board members.
We have a motion,
I second.
Mrs. Runyon, and that motion's been seconded by Mrs. White.
I have a question.
We have a question on the motion?
Mrs. Bowers, has anything you heard tonight made you change your recommendation?
No, I stand by my original recommendation.
Thank you.
Okay, we have a motion that's been made by Ms. Runyon, seconded by Mrs. White. I'd ask the clerk to call the roll, please.
Yes, Mr. Wenzel?
Aye.
Mrs. White?
Aye.
Mrs. Runyon?
Aye.
Myself, aye. President Bueno.
Aye, and that motion carries 5-0. Thank you. Ms. Bowers, if you would. Okay. Sounds like we've been at it for a sec. So if we're going to have a motion or a request by board members that we take a small restroom break. So if we could, it is 8:21. We'll reconvene at 8:30.